What should I write about? No, that won't do. I'll write about the snow!
Perfect.
This will make me so much money. What should I write about? I have an idea. I think I'll write to someone and ask for advice. I'll look for a poet that's been to one of the conventions. Here he is. Yevgeny Yevtushenko? Yevtushenko. Yevtushenko? Whatever his name is, he seems interesting.
Dear Yevgeny Hi, my name is Margaret Atwood. I don't know if you remember me, but I believe we attended a poetry convention together a few months ago. I'm writing to you because I've been struggling with writer's block and I thought maybe you could give me some advice. I really appreciate it. Respectfully, Margaret Atwood.
That should do a trick. I should probably send it to him now. Hope he responds soon.
Let's see, the mail. Bills? Let's see, orders to recant my statements? Nah. An American music magazine. How on earth do I even get this? I'm in Russia. Arrest orders from the Soviet government? Nothing to worry about. Let's see, what's this? A letter. Margaret Atwood. Who's this Atwood? Atwood? Ah, yes, the Canadian poet woman. I suppose I could write back to her. My travel orders are suspended for now. Let's see, where's that pencil? Pencil. No, that's a bill.
Dear Margaret Atwood, yes, I do remember you. You're a Canadian poet and novelist, yes? Please excuse me if I'm wrong, but that's why I remember you being. Anyway, how can I assist you? I think it would be helpful if you tell me about your life so I can understand where you're coming from. Sincerely, Yevgeny.
Dear YY, yes, it would be helpful if you get to know me a little better. Well, I was born on November 18th, 1939 in Ottawa, Ontario. When I was 7, my family moved to Toronto and spent the warmer months in remote areas of Ontario and Quebec. My father was an entomologist and zoology professor, and constantly studied tree-eating insects when I was younger. Naturally, I developed an interest in nature and the wilderness, which I describe in many of my poems. You can say nature has definitely influenced my poetry. Between the ages of 8 and 16, I faced a dark period in my life that I don't like to talk about. That bad time reflects in some of my writing, though I don't directly write about myself. Once I got to high school and took up writing again, I found myself heavily impacted by Edgar Allan Poe. Throughout my entire life, my parents have always expected me to make use of my intelligence and abilities. So, when I took up an interest in writing and discovered I had a talent, I kept going with it. I didn't want to waste one of my abilities. I think that's enough about me. How about you tell me about yourself so I can get to know you better? M.A.
Intriguing, rather different from my own. For you see, my inspiration came from childhood in Siberia, a fourth-generation exile. Much of my childhood was spent outdoors, aiding my father in his geologic research. It was here my love of freedom was born, nurtured by the love of my parents. In school, I found value in history, and I delved into it with gusto. It was writing about history that brought me fame, my first celebrated work being of the lack of monument at the ravine of Babi Yar. It threw me into international stardom, though the Russian government sought to hide my criticism of their policies. Now then, how about you describe your own writing style to me?
You sound very interesting. Well, I primarily write in free verse. Most of my poems start with words or phrases that appeal to the ears rather than the mind. See, I value the texture of sound found in poetry. I also tend to put rhymes in the middle of lines and avoid obvious alliteration and assonance. The movement and phrasing of poems are important to me. What about you? What's your style? M.A.
My style is flamboyant and straightforward, lacking a specific rhyming scheme, my own version of free verse. Now then, I think I still need to know a little more about you. Can you describe prevalent themes in your works?
Dear YY. Wow, you're really dedicated to helping me out. Thank you. Well, one of the main themes that crops up in my poetry is civilization versus wilderness. I believe that society is desperate to ignore wildness and disorder, and we do everything we can to protect order and structure. Also, nature often works to cover up tragedy. For example, the setting in This Is a Photograph of Me is serene and pleasant, but a dead girl is really at the bottom of the river. Another of my common themes is death. I believe 3 things regarding death. Everything humans do can remind one of death. Bodies decay and it's impossible to return to youth. And the only thing promised.
My themes were quite different from your own. I prefer to denounce Stalinism in light of history and international unity. Love is another key facet of my style, as even in my darkest poems, love worms its way into it in some form or another. I still feel like I need to know one more thing about you before I help. What are your poems typically about? Mine, for example, typically deal with increasing literary freedom in my home country, as well as the importance of history and its impact on the present.
Dear YY. Very interesting. My poems are typically about suffering, victims, conflict, and nature. The first 3 tie together because I describe them through nature. I often write about the conflict between civilization and wilderness, which can lead to suffering and victimization. At this point, I would like to thank you for... Wait, I suddenly have an idea for a poem! I don't have much time to talk because I have to get writing. I'll send you a poem once I finish. Thank you so much. M.A.